Sorry, are you connecting with porn stars?
Did you not hear the Scott Oak story from that was a year or two ago?
I was pouring wine very loudly.
And they're going to run out of time. One last chance. Downey, no! It's a Vegas jackpot. History made by the Golden Knights. The Vegas Golden Knights, a team that didn't even exist a year ago. They've got the golden ticket. They're moving on to the Western Conference Final.
And the puck is bouncing there, trying to track it down. Line 8 to the front of the goal. A bouncy puck in Shifley's feet, and it's over. And the Vegas Golden Knights will play for the Stanley Cup.
Viva! Viva! Las Vegas! We get a lot of shots. Everybody come to their net. We just have to get more and more pucks to their net.
What were you saying about putting pucks on net?
Pucks on net. Pucks on net.
Continue to put pucks on net.
Pucks on net.
Well, that's the key. We got to get the puck on net.
We used to talk about in Vancouver getting pucks on net.
Pucks on net and driving and making a hard night on them.
5 long years.
Live on tape from Geeta's apartment. Her palatial estate on the 23rd floor. This is Pucks on Net, a Vancouver hockey podcast that doesn't talk about fantasy or fancy stats. I don't know how we feel about the Vegas Golden Knights going to the Stanley Cup Final, but I imagine in the next 65 or so minutes, we'll talk about it. Or are we just going to talk about something else?
Man, you just heard it in the opening. 5 long years this team has been trying to get to the Stanley Cup Finals. And these Golden Knights just waltz in and go to the finals. And nobody even sends us an invitation to watch it.
What do you mean?
I'm just making fun of everybody.
I'm like,
jealousy.
Yeah, I'm like, it's been an open invitation for us to watch it.
Has there?
Well, no, not since they took away Game Center, but
Yeah,
that's a sore spot.
I am still sore because I had an open invitation to go to a game of the Stanley Cup Final if Winnipeg made it.
That was a conditional invitation.
Yep, and the condition was not met, and that's the only reason I'm really upset right now.
The condition being that Winnipeg
Make the final.
didn't blow it and fall apart, crumble like a
I'm about to walk into a statewide, province-wide funeral.
I told Paul to wear black for the funeral and to distract the gigantic mosquitoes.
Which game did Winnipeg win? The first one?
They won the first one where
and then lost 4 straight.
Yeah, so they were swept. We can call it that.
That's right.
That's not what a sweep is, but sure, Ryan, you call it whatever
They
you
lost
want.
4 straight games.
Because I think I said it on the podcast when they split the first 2 games in Winnipeg. I was like, Vegas isn't going to lose now.
No. And when they go back to Vegas with their weird projections of bullshit on the ice.
Well, it was more than that. It was straight up LARPing.
It was so bad.
No.
That's got to be the cheesiest thing I've ever seen. You haven't been too high on that at all.
I made one tweet. I guess I made a couple others because I was like, Winnipeg should come back and have a skit where a jet lands on a guy dressed up as a knight.
And Burton Cummins has some...
fire miss. Yeah, the thing opens up and it's Tom Cruise or Burton Cummings flying the jet. But yeah, no, I tweeted something about it because it was cheesy. They had me the opening video was a Johnny Canuck style, we defeated the king.
I did
and we feasted on shark.
Oh, okay,
and I was
right,
this is
right.
fine. The person with the arrow,
that was cool.
lighting the banners on fire. That was fine. But when the guy skated out and they were like, the Iron Birds of Winnipeg soar into the Las Vegas desert.
Welcome.
And then they pretend to sword fight on the ice for 4 minutes.
Yeah, it was a long 4 minutes.
And then they thrust him with a rope. They pulled him up and had him swooping down the night.
Because he was a wimp. He had to duck away because he's a jet.
And then they had them slice a projection. They lost me after the lighting the. I'm okay with a little bit of spectacle, but it went too far. And then people said, "When did you become the no fun police?" And
2000.
I mean, I live in West Vancouver. I've always been the no fun police, but
Paul, you're the no fun police of this podcast.
I also gotta. Well, you don't have to watch it if you don't like it. So Game 4, I didn't watch it.
I'll show this dick on.
Wait,
Twitter.
you let Twitter bully you into not doing something?
No, I wasn't going to watch it to begin with. They were saying it like, here's a suggestion you didn't think of. Like, no, when I saw it the first time, that was what, I don't have to tune in until about 25 minutes after when the game is supposed to start.
Paul promptly covered his television screen with cardboard, and he had no idea the Jets were in trouble.
Yeah, I tried to watch the first period like that. I was afraid there might be more LARPers.
Well, a little into it now, but my name is Ryan Schapp. I'll be your host for the evening. Joined to my immediate left is Geeta. She owns this establishment.
Welcome to my home.
And P-Mac, you're on the couch there, the no fun police.
That's my name. Don't wear it out.
I want to thank you for joining us wherever you got us from. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at pucksonnetca or pucksnetca. Dave's still in Italy, so I'm doing this on my own, talking to myself like I always do.
He's in France now for the stalkers.
Oh. And if you want to support the show monetarily, you can head on over to patreon.com/pucksonnet, where you can pledge a couple of bucks and get all our bonus content.
Or a couple of euros if you're Dave's new friends in Europe that he's making along the way.
Exactly. So
he's such a warm, kind fellow. I'm sure he has a friend in every borough and hole across the European countryside. When I said borough, that was more UK, and yeah, it went downhill from there. I'm sorry.
Hopefully he's got more than one. And make sure you rate and review the podcast on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, because that has been helping us out a lot so far. Mm-hmm. So the Winnipeg Jets. Yeah. Last week we were hesitant. We were nervous, but they looked so good in game one.
Remember, we never speak for Geeta.
We, mostly Geeta,
I was all in. I was trying to ignore all of my doubts because I'm becoming a temporary Winnipegger, so I was just trying to be as homerish as possible.
I mean, when did it start where the Jets were a reasonably good team playing, beating the Wild or the Preds, to being this juggernaut of perfection, and there's no way that the Golden Knights could beat them? Because I hopped on the bandwagon too, but
I think when it was whittled down to 4 teams, and you look at what's out there.
They were the second best team in the NHL, and they just knocked off the best.
Yeah.
But then you look at we were watching the Vegas Golden Knights all playoffs. There should have been some sort of nervousness or hesitation that maybe the Jets couldn't take care of the Knights that quickly.
Right.
And they didn't. I mean, they were close games. There was nothing they were very close where they would score their one goal randomly 8 seconds after some other goal, and then they would just shut it down. But game 5, I was kind of put off by the Jets. Did you watch game 5, Paul?
Yeah, game 4 and 5, I felt like they definitely had lost a lot of confidence, that their youth showed through.
Yeah.
And I know the Vegas Knights aren't a super old team, but there are a lot of vets on there. There are a lot of guys that have played for a lot of teams that have been to the playoffs in the past.
Yeah.
Well, you got a vet in Marc-Andre Fleury who knows how you can't take it seriously. You can't freak. You gotta keep cool. You gotta keep loose. James Neal, he was 1 year removed from the Stanley Cup Finals.
No. James Neal was
he not on that? Where was he last year?
Was he
on Nashville?
Yeah, he was in Nashville.
Yeah. So there is definitely some guys on this team that could do that. And outside of Buff, you didn't really have a lot of guys that had that resolve, that tank of, we'll take it easy and you can win this game.
Well, Fleury's the name you bring up right off the bat, and the guy that looked different to me, and he was still very good. Hellebuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still very good, but just there were little moments where he just didn't look as confident and cocky in a good way as he had in the past, because it's all new to him. Even just being a starter in the NHL and as good as he's been, it wasn't that he was bad, but there were just a couple of moments. I'm trying to think. They had a couple of goals that came just off rushes, stealing the puck, like the winning goal in that game 4
where it kind of went through
fanned
him.
on
Yeah.
it.
Oh.
The two goals were scored, guys skating up the left-hand side. Hellebuck was maybe not as far out as he should be, didn't track the puck. They were great shots. He only left a sliver of the net available, but that sliver was, not there.
That sliver Marc-Andre Fleury's not giving up.
Well, yeah.
Okay, I want to throw an analogy out there.
Oh, no.
Why?
No.
Bear with me, because it's going to make sense. And and this quote unquote Cinderella run. You know that scene in Cinderella when the stepsisters are discarding dresses and beads and pearls and ribbon, and the mice and the birds are running around.
And then they dress Cinderella.
And they build Cinderella this beautiful dress, and when she puts it on and the stepsisters see it, they're like, no, that belongs to me and me, and they tear it apart. This is how that team was constructed. Now everyone around the league is looking at what they had just discarded.
Wait a minute, we didn't mean to give you Marc-Andre Fleury.
This whole part of the argument's been bugging me a bit.
It's very. That was a good analogy.
It's not a bad analogy at all, but they got me into this thinking where all year, and especially right now, when everyone's like, why does anybody feel angry at the Vegas Knights, or they're the better team? These are all these castaways. Nobody wanted these players. That narrative's been going on all year, and that's bothered me because these are not players that nobody wanted. These are players that...
Did we want Lucas Pisa?
Let me finish my point. That was actually part of my point. I was going to say most of these players, except for a few guys like Lucas Spiza out of Vancouver, teams were loath to let go of. When teams like Florida and Minnesota are making moves to like give them somebody so they'll take someone else, they know both of these guys are good. They don't want to lose these guys. They just know we're going to lose somebody that we really don't want to lose slightly more than that if they don't take these guys. And that whole narrative of like, these are players nobody wanted and they have a chip on their shoulder. Most of these guys are guys that other teams were really upset to lose. That's why we saw that rush of trades, because the quality of players available, the rules as they were in place, allowed a lot of young players to be available to these clubs, because you're going to have to put someone good, several good players in most cases, up on the table for Vegas to choose from. So, I mean, that's bogus. Like, it wasn't an all-star team by any means. Don't get me wrong. But, like, these on the same hand aren't like, this isn't like past expansion drafts.
But
where you're
nevertheless,
getting washed up old guys.
Like, this is still a collection of players that hadn't played together and came together and gelled really quickly and really well.
They
like,
are
surprisingly.
They're an incredible team. As a team, as a whole, and these 5-man units in every zone, like, they are so smart and they don't make any mistakes. It's incredible. Like we can hate everything about how they came together, the team, how the draft lottery was all in their favor. You can hate all that. You can hate how annoying they are. But when you watch the actual hockey, they are an incredible team. And it's I hate that they are, but they're fantastic.
I don't even. I'm somewhere in the middle, and that is one of the points. Like, there needs to be a separation, and I'm basing a lot of this. What is the hockey conversation that I see most of the time right now, especially when there's no hockey in Vancouver? It's what's going on Twitter, and that's a horrible way to judge because everyone's pissed off about one thing or another, and there's all these people mad at Vegas getting there so quickly, and then there's a bigger group, from what I've seen, of people mad at the people mad at Vegas.
What if Vegas?
Being there.
What if Vegas loses the Stanley Cup and they have a bigger and better riot than Vancouver? And that's gonna suck.
We have nothing to hold on to. But the point I was trying to make there, or build up to, was
Great, they out-rioted us.
There needs to be a separation between, like, we can appreciate the team that was brought together, and they are playing beyond what they should.
Yeah.
And they have come together in a great way, and the coaching's been fantastic, and we should respect everything they've done. There's that side of it. Then the other side of the conversation is, yes, were the rules set up in a way that was unfair to other teams, in the sense of teams build up for years. Depth is what. Let me. I will let you
finish. No one's
Keita's
cutting
putting
you
me on edge
off.
because it looks like
I'm like, yeah,
I'm so used to Dave.
I'm not cutting
pouncing
you off.
I know. You're just giving me hand gestures. I lost my.
You did that to yourself.
Yeah, Vegas.
Do you think these rules should have always been in place for expansion teams then? Because it's competitive hockey.
It's funny you say that because in the NBA they basically changed the draft lottery because the Orlando Magic were expansion team and were so bad, and then they tanked and got all those players, and they had to change that. So it's
they gave, and the NHL used to do this too. The draft used to be set up more in favor of expansion clubs,
right?
But yeah, the NBA, in a league that has fewer players, it can be more impacted by high draft picks because they play more percentage of the game. So you get Shaquille O'Neal going in. The Magic are automatic contenders. It's a different thing. But yeah, what I was saying is, from these other teams, you have to. The question should be asked, like, what should an expansion team be given off the bat? In the past, it was generally
a kick in the ass and say good luck.
No, because you shouldn't be going into playing an expansion team and think that's an automatic win.
But that's how it's been literally since they expanded in 1967.
We're just conditioned to thinking like that. Doesn't mean that's how it has to be.
But is it fair to, especially in a league where what wins championships right now, there's different things you could say, but one of the main ones right now, especially in a league with so much parity, is depth. And when you're giving up depth players, but like high-end depth players, and in a lot of cases, guys like Karlsson are these guys in the bottom 6 that are just about ready to jump up into the top 6 that will make a difference. How big a difference could he have made theoretically for Columbus this season? Should teams that have spent so long drafting, putting all this effort into guys like that, then lose them for nothing to a team that gets a whole bunch of these potentials, and they only need a few of those to step up, like we saw with the Vegas Knights? It's not taking away from them. It's just like,
this team
what conversations need to be have about what should be expected, what's delivered to a city ready-made.
Did you see, if we were back in October, if you read any of the pundits or the NHL insiders talk about what type of team they drafted, it wasn't a very good one. They weren't supposed to be very good. They were supposed to have a couple of good guys in there, and Marchessault and James Neal and Marc-Andre Fleury, who was a bit of a laughingstock. Nobody expected this. Nobody expected this. And then when they were winning, we thought it's just because the road teams were going in and getting hung over and partying their faces off. And you can say all you want that the draft lottery was stacked in their favor, like a crazy amount. It was in a reasonable amount, but the point is they drafted a team and they swindled GMs into getting a very reasonable, well-skilled, under-the-radar team that Gerard Gallant has coached in such a good, decisive way. That's the anomaly. It's not the players or how they got them. It's what they did. The sum is greater than the parts.
Yeah, and they have a very good general manager.
They do, and they knew, and they took advantage of people like Dale Talon that was dropping Riley Smith for a fourth because of an internal cap. They screwed up on waiving Marchessault, who was their leading goal scorer for the Panthers last year, because they wanted to protect a bunch of defensemen. And then there's William Karlsson, which nobody saw coming, nobody gets. I can't explain it. I would love somebody to explain to me that can explain how this happened, because I can't.
Well, that's sort of what I'm breaking. And I'm saying there needs to be a separation here where they were playing above what was expected. Although I would venture to say, while people were predicting them to finish low, at the same time, there are a lot of people. I remember when the draft happened saying, well, they're already better than the Canucks.
Well, I mean,
because we're based in Vancouver. We hear that type of feedback. And definitely, that's why I'm somewhere in the middle. Yes, they played above and they did a fantastic job, and we should celebrate the team for coming together as they have. But from an organizational standpoint, from the NHL standard, it was an easier route than other expansion teams.
Oh, nobody's debating that.
So the question goes, should teams be given something competitive to bring the fans in to win over the local crowds right away? Or should you just be given these bodies like in the past we've seen that are more fill spots while the team builds from within through drafting and free agency? And it takes 4 or 5 years, but you have to do it by the sweat of your brow as opposed to being given. And you talk, people didn't have high expectations, but scouts and stuff, a guy like Marchessault, I've seen a lot of cocky, fancy stats guys, and they should be. And I looked at the fancy stats, not that I'm a fancy stats guy because I'm not Spartan enough to be one of those, but you look at his numbers and it was like he was destined with a reasonable, pair of line mates to do some damage.
Yeah.
Karlsson is a guy that a lot of people didn't know about, but if you watch the Columbus Blue Jackets, you go, he's got potential. He's a guy I still think you look at a Marcus Granlund in Vancouver, and just because I see them way more than other teams, if you stuck him on a line, I don't think he's a superstar or anything on his own. Don't get me wrong. But if you stuck him on a line with 2 really good players in a playoff contender market, he's the type of guy that could Anson Carter, leap ahead, I think, offensive production-wise.
The Nick Bonino effect?
Anyone would expect.
To bring back to Vancouver, the Nick Bonino effect?
Yeah, Bonino contributed in ways other than offense, too, in the places he went.
Even though they had advantages going in, there's no accounting for what they did in the playoffs, because there were, 15 other teams, some of them with better rosters.
And we're still going, well, just wait till they play a real team. Just wait till they play the San Jose Sharks, a real playoff team. Just wait till they play the Jets. That's a real playoff team.
You and I said that before the playoffs started. Oh, well, they're not going to get past the Los Angeles Kings.
And they did really, really, really easily.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, they were close games, but there was not a moment in that series where I'm like, oh, man, the Golden Knights are on the ropes here. There's going to be a Game 5.
And so at what point, I mean, even the teams that they didn't play, there were some great teams out there that it didn't work out for. You know, Pittsburgh didn't advance past the second round.
Look at the teams in the West. If there was different seeding or there was different if they finished anywhere, who could have beaten the Golden Knights in the West?
Well, it was a good set. Even you talk about the conference final with the Jets. One of the things I wanted to bring up is, and I didn't bring this up because this was what honestly scared me as a trying to be a Jets fan. Me going to Winnipeg soon for a little bit.
Wait a minute. Ulterior motive?
You know, sometimes. Just I convinced myself that, I can get a ticket to a Stanley Cup final. I can ride in another city. No, I was not involved in that.
Sure.
I was in Merritt that night.
Allegedly.
Anyway, one thing that I thought might happen, which I think did happen, think about the Boston Bruins coming out of the first round and that first game in the second round, and everyone's like, oh, the Boston Bruins could win the Stanley Cup. Look at how good they look against Tampa. And I said, I'm a little cautious with them because they're so exhausted. That first game looked like they won it because just 2 nights before they won a Game 7.
The riding high.
I kind of felt like that might happen to the Jets, and I feel like that's part of what happened. I'm not going to say that's everything, but the Jets probably could have put up more of a fight if they didn't go through that emotional, you have to give your all physically.
Yeah.
And then game 1, you're still riding that, and they came in 2.5 minutes in and scored a goal. They had 3 goals in the first 7.5 minutes.
It was a 4-2 final.
They did not look like the same team in any of the games following game 1.
And then what happened before game 2? The Golden Knights retooled. They brought in Thomas Tatar. They changed their lineups. They changed how they played. And then they were the Golden Knights we'd seen in the other 2 rounds. And the Jets never changed. And the Jets somehow got worse and worse and sloppier and sloppier. And it was like they couldn't go into the offensives like that.
Fatigue and nerves really looked to play a part in that
But
series.
they looked so good. If they could get into the offensive zone, they could beat anybody off the puck. They could control it. But then, it was a matter of getting into that zone. And it just never seemed to happen.
No.
And the series was closer than it looked. I want to say it was game 2.
Yeah.
In the first period, it was 2 or 3. Fleury got, I think, 4 posts. Like the Jets hit the post 4 times. Like those go in. Who knows what happens to this series? There was one spot where they deflected a couple that missed the net. Fleury was way out of position.
They were all close games.
Fleury's been amazing. Don't get me wrong. I was looking at the numbers today, and there's some fancy stat that someone's done up, and it's like how good are goalies playing above what the average goaltender numbers are right now. And everybody that's playing above it, numbers-wise in the playoffs, was 2, 3, 4% save percentage points higher than the average.
Yeah.
He's like 14, 15. Like he was leagues ahead of anybody else. But he's also been extremely lucky. Playoff success and goalie success.
Get out of here.
What
are you talking about?
Is all about good to be lucky, lucky to be good.
Get a hot goalie and you go to
when
the
you're
Stanley
not in
Cup
position
Finals.
a couple of times, you luck out. The guy misses
that
the net.
something new?
Hits the post. So, and with Vegas gambling, all that luck, lady luck. It makes sense in some weird way, but they did their business in quick amounts of time. They were well rested for all these series.
Could you see Washington actually beating Vegas?
No.
Yeah.
I see Vegas steamrolling Washington. Now we're recording this midway through the third period of Game 6. I hate to date it, and that's the problem with playoff podcasts.
It's 2-0 Washington as we're watching this right now. These 2 teams are going to be tired.
You know what's crazy is they are going to be so tired because they are giving it all. And we're watching the Capitals against the wall, and they are putting everything. They're leaving everything out there.
Yeah.
Like they should probably lose Game 7 because they're going to be spent after this series, after this game, if they win.
Yeah.
You watch the Winnipeg Jets during Game 5.
Yeah.
And it was just a matter of, nerves. Their sticks are turned into sawdust in their hands. They're giving the puck away constantly. And there was just never a moment where it's like, all right, when are you guys going to dial it up a little here? When are you guys going to, there is no tomorrow.
Yeah.
You should probably get a starting pitcher in the bullpen because if you lose this game, there's no another game.
Be interesting to look at the numbers. First round, like quick victories, if you can win it in 4 or 5 games, how has that played a role with Stanley Cup?
Right.
Or at least playoff success, not necessarily the winners, but teams that have gone on to the conference finals and the Stanley Cup finals. Yeah. Because honestly, that quick finishing off the Kings in the first round set them up to be slightly more well-rested against the Sharks, and the Sharks never got Joe Thornton back, and Kane was out for a bit, and if you're more well-rested and the other team's beat up a little bit, that steamrolls where, the next team you play, the Jets, also tired, kind of beat up from the last round, and the Jets or the Knights were able to get through their round. There's all these different elements, and it's not to take away. It's just like certain little things in the playoffs in a league with such parity as we see today.
It all adds up.
But it ultimately catches up to you. I mean, like, you could say that about a team like Pittsburgh. They had 2 really great years, but that was going to catch up to them because they have played more hockey than anyone else has, and they were going to be exhausted.
And they were always sick, at least 6 or 7 game series. They always took their time and played all those games getting to the finals. But no, it totally makes sense that Vegas has one last game to play where there's teams facing elimination that are going to leave everything, and they're going to try and hit you through the boards every chance they get. Yeah. You have one less of those, one less practice, one less travel, two less flights. Like, it just adds up, and you have that that rest, and it's just amazing. They're probably going to win the Stanley Cup. Yeah.
And you gotta think if this series goes to 7 in the East,
why wouldn't they?
The Knights should be the favorites.
And you're now literally flying coast to coast.
That's true, yeah. I mean, and here we go again. While the Jets are a complete team, top to bottom, defense, goaltending.
We're finally taking the Knights serious. It took 3 rounds where we all wrote them off.
No.
But wait till they play a real team like Tampa.
One of us gave up a few weeks ago and said Vegas is probably going to win.
And it was who?
Before we get too far removed, because I feel like we're starting to taper down on the Vegas talk. Something when we talk about how they built this team that hasn't been discussed, and I'm surprised by it, is this is the first expansion team we've had since the salary cap era.
Yep.
And I think that played a bigger role than people realize when you talk about underrated guys, Marchessault, fancy stats, underlying numbers types of decisions. When you look around the NHL and your spending is limited, you're not able to carry a team like Chicago had their first Stanley Cup victory that should have been in the old NHL. They could have won 6 or 7 in a row, but they had when Buffalo was there.
Well, Vegas hasn't had to sign any big contracts, right? Well, that's going to happen at some point.
They signed Marchessault this year to a very reasonable deal, and there's a few more, and I think William Karlsson's one of them.
Yeah, well,
he's an RFA.
Okay.
What I'm saying, going into the draft,
but they got Sorry to cut you off. They have something like $24 million in cap space.
They're still way under.
Okay.
And that's part of being able to pick these, especially the young guys who are just starting to break out or have the potential to break out.
All of it's going to Stamkos.
Potentially.
You mean Tavares?
Tavares.
Oh, Tavares?
Yeah. Stamkos played hard to get, where he's like, I'm going to see how pretty other teams think I am, and then go, Yzerman's fine.
Yeah, it's nice to wear your flip-flops.
But they plucked...
finish your thought, because I guess this takes us to Tavares.
Well, they plucked all these guys that are on their first or their second of a 3-year entry-level contract that are, they're clearly on the up and up, so they can build a winner now in a 2 or 3 year span, and then they have RFA deals, so they're in a very good spot. And they were picking up bad contracts.
Well, they were able to choose the bad contracts they took, and they can do the math and go, we need this money in 2 years, so for these 2 years we can have... insert name. Is Horton in there? They've got a couple of those
David
guys.
Clarkson.
Clarkson's there.
Yeah, that's
on
one
the
of them.
books. So they can spend carefully.
Yeah.
They don't have anyone like the problem with a lot of NHL teams is a lot of teams have a Louis Eriksson type of guy who's making more money than he should for the output that they're getting.
The Brent Seabrooks of the world, Polly.
And if you can avoid those guys for a couple, 2, 3, 4 years.
A couple of years.
That's huge to a team. So there's little things like that when you look at the big picture. It's new territory. Not only that, most of these GMs have never had to deal with an expansion draft. If they have, it's been 20 years.
You also
add all these new elements into it, and it's like the NHL will have to look at things before Seattle, and it could really hurt them.
I don't think the NHL needs to look at things. I think the GMs have learned the hard way. Now, this came out this week, and they talked about how these players, where they got their team from.
Yeah.
And Alex Tuck was traded to Vegas so the Knights would draft Eric Holla?
Ain't no
Holobacchio from Minnesota. Shea Theodore, who's a hell of a defensive prospect out of the Thunderbirds and from Abbotsford, Yale Secondary Academy of Hockey, name dropper. That's where I went to school. He was traded to Vegas so the Knights would draft Clayton Stoner, the Bear Killer.
Okay.
And they were given a first and second round pick to trade they were traded a first and a second for William Karlsson and David Clarkson's contract, and they were given a second so that they would draft Marc-Andre Fleury. So all these GMs, most of them gave up their Lucas Spiza or their Dave Engelland from Calgary. But then there's the Dale Talon out of Florida who gifted them 2/3 of a top line. It's just...
And the coaching staff.
Yeah, and the coaching staff. Well, I was corrected very publicly on Twitter today that it was the weird owner, Vinny Viola, and that old GM that was kind of brought in before Talon got his powers back. But the point is, the Florida Panthers as a collective...
Talon got his powers back. That was an Infinity War.
That whole collective, cluster muck of chaos in Florida gave them a Stanley Cup, likely. And it's wild. So I think
Vancouver's been trading partners with Florida for so long. How have they not been gifted 2/3 of a top line?
That could have been Vancouver's. They could have used that coach.
Come on,
a year ago too.
There was something that came out. Now we're gonna go off Vegas for a bit here. We should also say Derek Engelland, who is the unofficial captain. They don't have a captain, and he's I believe he's from Vegas. He was the one to go pick up the Clarence Campbell Bowl. He touched it. Yeah. He grabbed it. And like we've talked on this...
I saw your fancy stats. They're meaningless.
Those are pretty basic stats. I don't think they were fancy.
50% of the people who touched
versus 65%.
Yeah, losers touch the trophy 65%.
Math doesn't add up.
I believe it means that... That means that if they don't, I think it's East versus West. I can't remember. Don't look at those numbers.
The numbers are too fancy for us to understand. Apparently.
But we've talked about on the show many years where it's like, don't be superstitious. Pick up the cup. It's a trophy. Don't celebrate it. Just take it off the ice, leave it, put it on the ground, saying we want something better.
Or on the table.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they did, which I love.
Yeah.
So that
superstitions. Anytime I see a player, I don't mind a little superstition when I see athletes, but the ones that are extreme with it. You start to wonder how can that impact your play otherwise. Superstition is...
Do you got any superstitions you don't like in hockey right now, besides not touching those trophies or not touching the president's trophy?
And those are ones that, it doesn't really matter. If a player wants to do that and that makes him feel better. But, I'm trying to think. I feel like there are some guys and you usually hear about it after their careers. Players, I used to play with this backup goalie and he used to do this every game. And don't change their underwear or wash it or,
That's laziness right there.
That's an excuse. It's not about luck. They just don't want it.
I'm eccentric. I don't know how to do laundry.
You smell.
So, superstition and excess starts making you wonder about certain athletes' ability to mentally get through things. But
it's only quirky up until a point.
Would you walk under a ladder?
No.
Paul?
What is there anything on the ladder?
No, there's a ladder in Geeta's palatial estate. She's having a new chandelier installed.
I walk around it.
Do you walk underneath it?
It doesn't bother me either way.
Okay, I would walk underneath it. I'm not afraid. You worried about squishing a spider?
Like killing a spider means it's gonna rain?
Yeah.
I'll take my chances. I live in Vancouver.
Yeah. What about smashing a mirror?
That one, the thought will cross my mind if it happens.
Because you break a lot of mirrors in a week-to-week basis.
Yeah.
I didn't even remember
the extreme ones are I don't step on a crack or something like that.
Yeah, well, that's more OCD.
Or a black cat crosses my path. So
black cats are the best.
I need to turn around or I can't.
I live in the West End, so I was I see skunks, and that makes me have to go to the side of the street. Actually, I was very drunk on Friday night, and some people were saying, "Watch out, there's a skunk," and we're like, "Whoa."
A skunk crossed our path last night.
Yeah, and it was like, "What are you talking about?" And he had to say it 2 or 3 times. I'm like, "Oh, a skunk! Oh, thank you so much."
You look over and it's Brad Marchand and Milan Lucic. Couple of skunks. Sorry, guys. Vancouver, that's what people might label.
Well, we are in Vancouver. I should say that on Friday I was invited to be a professional bachelor partier at Pucks on Net listener and Patreon backer Kevin's stag party.
Thanks for the invite, Kevin.
Congratulations, Kevin.
I didn't know if you guys are invited or not, so I didn't. I just went on my own.
That's fine.
Any of your complaints can be sent to Kevin Stratton at KStrat9 on
Do we
Twitter.
rate and review him?
Negative. No, he gives us money. You can do that on your own.
He can invite whoever the hell he wants if he gives us money. I mean, I don't see any of that money, but theoretically it does
But I
good.
should be attending bachelor parties anyways.
A lot of good American dudes. I'll say that. Very nice boys. Hopefully,
Congratulations, Kevin.
He hasn't been married yet.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Well, he's well on his way.
Well, he's yeah.
Oh, hopefully.
Ryan's expecting an ill turn, apparently.
No, well, I'm saying you don't congratulate somebody on a night of craft beer drinking.
No, we're congratulating him on his impending nuptials.
Impending. Ooh.
Ryan's cautious. He's kind of like, how it didn't work out for Vegas.
Is this a superstition? Like you don't want us to talk about it in order not to jinx it?
Don't talk about it.
When the Vegas Knights split that projection of a jet in two and it blew up before they had won the series. Bad juju, guys.
We all know what happened there.
Yeah.
Hey,
they got lucky.
I can't wait to see what kind of performance they put on if they have to go up against those Capitals.
I thought you were talking about this impending wedding.
No, I want to see like a reenactment of some sort of political scene.
I'm going to throw out, if Washington or Tampa, whoever plays them, if you want some help writing your skits, I was coming up with ideas for ones in Winnipeg. As much as I didn't like the ones in Vegas, I like to fight fire with fire, so... we'll get Thor. We can get Chris Hemsworth to come to the Lightning game with Hulk Hogan, and they'll wrestle on the ice, and Lightning will come down, and they'll be able to beat the evil Knight.
Well, let me tell you something, brother. When it comes to the Golden Knights, dude.
Man, Hulk Hogan and Chris Hemsworth, that would be a great tag team, let me tell you. Taking on a couple of fat dudes in LARPing outfits. That would be a great time.
Hulks are not in good shape anymore, dude.
But he could take some LARPers on. I mean,
got a bad back,
and I am the type of person that would LARP, so I'm making fun of myself here.
This is a very... I think we haven't really talked about this, but if we were to write a letter to our former podcast self 2 years ago.
Okay. I get that.
The Jets, there's going to be a Game 7 for those listening. Days later.
Hooray.
Oh my gosh!
This is how they find out.
If the Caps make the final, do the Knights bring out a guy dressed as Donald Trump to fight the
That's
Knight?
what I was asking earlier. I'm like, is that what they're gonna do? They've got some great material to play with.
Well, they can't do a founding father. They can't do any of the key presidents. Maybe Gerald Ford. Nobody really cares about him.
I'm trying to think. Nevada's kind of more Republican leaning, I think. So they probably won't want to fight Trump.
It's going to be Bill.
But is Uncle Sam going to come out? You can't do that. That's anti-American.
It'll be Hillary. We're not going to go off a political tangent here this week. Not yet.
We're just speculating here on what's going to be the skit before the Stanley Cup Final.
We'll know by next Monday.
PMAC brought up a very good word, speculating. And I didn't put this on the rundown, but I think we've all talked about it. On last week's 31 Thoughts with Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman, Jeff Merrick said something very interesting. He chose his words very carefully, and he basically said a top prospect that was drafted by a very prominent NHL team in the last few years is likely not going to make the NHL because of a crippling video game addiction.
It wasn't who we were speculating it was.
Who were we speculating?
Someone who played in the OHL. Apparently, I was told today it was someone who played in the WHL.
Oh?
Yeah.
Where'd you hear that?
From my contacts in Toronto.
Oh, you know?
Because I asked, and then he blew me off, or he brushed it off, going, "No, it's just someone insignificant who plays in the WHL."
Real? Oh, yeah. Did he say any more?
I didn't.
Is it Rasmussen? Is it from Detroit?
I can dig some more. He's not going to be listening.
He might. You never know. He's crafty. Well, this is interesting because...
But it's not who we were speculating that it was.
Ole Uelevi.
Sure.
Well, that was Ryan's. Everyone in Vancouver was like, of course, with Canuck luck, it's going to be our guy. I think every city seemed to be tweeting that out. Oh, of course, it's our guy.
There were some facts that were pointing towards Ole Uelevi.
No, and that's what he said. When he started this conversation with me this morning, he said, oh, it's Ole Uelevi. And then he went away and then came back and he says, it's not. Which means I feel like he went and asked his sources.
Jeff Merrick.
Sure.
This is actually a very funny segment because now I feel very good based on who we know. We here at the podcast are very powerful people, and we know equally powerful people.
Between us, we know.
Because again, like, it
Some
wasn't a
people.
conversation that I prompted, and I wasn't digging for anything. It was just coming for me.
That's how you spin it. Not that I even care about this, but there
Well,
was.
what's the gossip?
Who's addicted to Fortnite?
What was pointing towards Oli Ulevi? Because I just heard most of that was like, of course it's Vancouver because we're cursed.
There were a couple of things. One was he hasn't made the NHL yet. The news was old news. It came back from either before last season, and there was a handful of interviews with former players or either former London Knights or former like friends or whatever prospects that said that Oli Ulevi plays a shitload of video games.
Yeah, but clearly somebody plays more.
That's right. And then you kind of look and you think prominent. So you think Canadian City, you think Original Six, and maybe Tampa.
But also, like, this kid hasn't been playing in the OHL, or he hasn't been playing in the CHL the last season.
Well, he had his first season in Finland, and it was subpar, and it wasn't the best.
I just listened to it, and granted, Sammy Sell is one of his coaches, and he is former Canucks, so he's pumping tires. But apparently, by the playoffs, I think Henrik Talander is on the team and was one of their key shutdown guys, former NHLer.
Yeah.
Hurt. And Oli Ulevi apparently was their number one guy in the playoffs and was effective, even though they didn't have a ton of success. Impressed for being that young and filling in for, a 15-year NHL vet or 10-year NHL vet, however long Talinder spent in the league.
So there was some doom and gloom that it's got to be Oli Ulevi.
We just suck it up and take it.
It would make
The
sense.
thing is, if you ask about at least half, if not more, I'd say guys that play junior hockey.
Yeah.
They don't have, they play hockey, they flirt with girls, and they play video games.
Oh,
so
Oliver Ekman-Larsson has his own Twitch. Like, a lot of players have their own Twitch streaming channels where all they do is play video games.
Oh, isn't it?
Oh.
See, the most speculation I had heard around it was, is it Max Jones?
Max Jones was the easy one.
Who has a Twitch channel that's doing very well, and someone was speculating if he continued with it, he could be making maybe not NHL superstar numbers, but very good money doing his Twitch thing.
I didn't even know what a Twitch
hearing.
was till right now.
You don't know what Twitch is?
No. Why would I know what Twitch is?
So it's a video streaming thing, and it's used by a lot of people that game and broadcast their game. I've never actually watched it, but I spend too much time
all
on
the
the
words
internet.
that you're saying, there's no reason that I
What,
would
stream,
ever...
Twitch, video game?
We're all on the cusp of being millennials, and apparently I've hung out in the millennial regions while others have not. It's lit, fam.
Jesus Christ. Anyway, based
yeah.
on our inside sources, it's not. That's good.
Isn't Twitch how Jake Virtanen got to know that cosplayer that he liked so much?
That's exactly right.
I googled her. She seems like a nice girl.
Yeah,
she's into Pokemon and stuff.
And she fudged the screenshots to make him seem more pathetic, which I didn't think was
that's
very
not nice.
But he was also going through his pathetic phase at that time.
He was out of it.
Oh, okay.
He scored that nice goal in Dallas while he was there sending her DMs.
I'll show that Twitch cosplay girl who was lame and who's pathetic.
Now my name might sound a little more familiar.
Twitch and cosplay.
NHL goal scorer Jake Virtanen.
I'm actually really pumped to see Jake in the fall because he seems like a man possessed. Every little bit and piece that I see about him, it's just like he's spending too much time in the gym. He's not eaten a pie in 3 years. It's just, I don't know. I'm curious to see.
I'm gonna go
also, because a slice of pie in Yaletown costs $8.50.
Yeah, and I mean
that's a lot of money.
At that rookie contract, I mean that's a couple of bucks, but it's only a couple of bucks.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look at Jake's Instagram story right now. Let's see what we got. Okay. Oh, he's playing with 2 dogs. That's nice.
Aww.
And that's it. So he's not working out. He's playing with dogs in Abbotsford. So he's off the wagon. He's on the pie. And
that's a huge leap to be making there, Ryan.
That's the assumptions you make from an Instagram story.
It was good to see, speaking of Canucks, since we've already slid into that direction, as we always do at some point, Pettersson, who did not get to play in the last few games, but did get his Did they get a medal? Did they get a trophy? I can't even remember.
Did he
World
get both.
Championship.
Did he get very hurt?
Sweden won. And Nilsson.
No, but he had like surgery or something.
Yeah,
He broke a finger.
Oh, okay.
Fractured a
Fine,
finger.
though.
Yeah.
All right.
Thumb.
and Nilsson is the greatest goalie in the world
Yeah.
until further notice. What's that, Paul?
You know who fed the scouting report on Nilsson to Team Sweden?
Was that you? With that guy next to you in the press box?
the scout for Team Sweden was sitting next to me for the game in Vancouver, and he was looking at Markstrom, Nilsson,
And
and Forsberg.
And you recommended.
And I said, hey, none of these goalies are that great.
Look at these bums.
But
Henrik Hukvist?
Nilsson, when he's on his game, and if you put him behind a legitimate professional defense core, he's positionally sound and will look amazing.
Was that a backhanded compliment and insult to the Vancouver Canucks?
Yes.
What do you got
their
against Derek
defense is
Pouliot? Come on. He's a hell of a guy.
Nilsson
He's up for the Norse this year.
Nilsson positionally is pretty good, and we saw like two of his first 3 starts were shutouts this year
But
when the
Paul
team was
just won
playing
the
well.
guy a medal, and he's gonna come
I won
back
the-
here with a
Chip on his shoulder?
Yeah,
I won
confidence.
the whole country of Sweden a world championship. That was all me, guys. I'm
They-
going to be hired by their scouting staff soon.
Yeah, they put one of those gold crowns in your head.
Yeah, we're going to dip PMAC in gold over on our Twitch channel later.
I assumed they were looking for a backup goalie, and honestly, I was like,
It's just
yeah,
cosplay.
go with Nilsson. Your D is going to be pretty good. Markstrom's better overall.
That's a weird scouting report on Anders Nilsson.
Anyway, he looked amazing in the world championship.
I bet he did based on that scouting report. Phrasing, Paul.
But
phrasing.
Canada lost again in the semifinals.
Yeah, this is something that I'm very interested about because I want people to keep tabs on this. I mean, the Calgary Flames season is a long ways away.
Yeah.
But their highly touted new head coach, since Gelly got fired for one too many sticks being thrown into the upper deck, they brought in Angry Bill Peters, Wild Bill Peters, former Carolina Hurricanes head coach.
Okay.
And he was the head coach of Canada at the IIHF World Championships, or as PMAC has politely called it, the Loser Olympics.
I did call it
That's
that.
it's so funny because...
and I respect those athletes,
No,
but it is for players that don't make the NHL playoffs, which is really
Yeah.
weird to
Not to
me.
mention this year they played it in Denmark.
Ugh, the Danes.
I hear
Ugh.
Denmark's a lovely country.
Oh, I'm sure it's lovely.
Oh,
but,
they all
But, you
are.
know, the hockey hotbed.
Yeah. But I wanted to be passionate about this team and have Bo in there and watch Connor McDavid finally play for Canada at a pro level. And then you can criticize players that don't go, but then at the same time, here we are making fun of it, calling it the championships.
It's true. I've watched a lot of World Championships in my day.
Mm-hmm.
This is a year that I didn't watch one game, a period, a second of it. I didn't bother looking for it whatsoever.
It was on at odd times, and
Not to mention, like, it was there were players that I didn't want to see. Like, there was nothing there that drew me to it.
yeah, you make a good point.
It's
a lot of Oilers.
Really interesting talking about goaltending still. A lot of people are faulting Canada's lack of success on the fact, I think Darcy Kemper was the starter for
It
most
was
of the
Kemper
go.
and Curtis McElhaney.
It's just, it's
McElhaney,
not
yeah.
a draw, right?
It's
But
not a draw, and there was a lot of Canadian goalies that didn't go.
But
Yeah.
Sweden won with Anders Nilsson in net, so shouldn't Canada theoretically have done better if you can win with essentially a backup goalie in net?
They had two in net. They had two backup goalies for Canada. So,
and they had a junior goalie as the third stringer, which also talking about
his shitty jersey. Ugh, don't even get me started.
Oh,
on
yeah.
that.
Hey, look, if Vegas can go all the way to a championship, I don't see why Canada can't.
with a Blazers goalie in their lineup for part of the year.
That's the other thing. Back to Vegas for a second. All their goalies were hurt constantly. Dylan Ferguson made the jump from the Sandman Center in Kamloops down by the Thompson River to playing at
Is that the hotel that you would stay at?
No, we weren't that good. He went from
I believe he was at Boston Pizza, Ryan.
Yeah,
in Kamloops.
he went from Boston
Straight.
Pizza to the Sandman Center to get his gear to Madison Square fucking Garden, which I don't remember if he won, but it's like they had no goalies. Now we know who Manny Legacy is, a household name because they had all their goalies were hurt all year long, and we forget. Like,
It
they're
wasn't
good.
all year long. It was a section of the year. All the injuries happened at once.
It was a good chunk. Like, it was a month of it where it was just goalie after goalie after goalie.
Yeah. And so you to add that on to that team persevered and overcame that, and is now going to the Stanley Cup. So it's pretty impressive.
Was it. We were like, that's it. The team is done. They'd have to be done.
But we said
They've got Ryan in net.
We said it so slyly. Oh, too bad for those losers. They're so done.
Yeah, that was how.
In here it was.
The point I was trying to make that this started from was DiPietro won OHL Goalie of the Year.
That's great.
So
Thatcher who?
Not quite, but you always want someone, and Thatcher's on the edge of jumping, to the next level. So it's good to see another guy that could come into Utica.
What passport does he carry?
Who?
Demko.
He's an American.
Okay.
From San Diego.
Yeah.
Which translates to a whale's vagina.
Yeah, I've heard that. That's what it means in English.
It's like, I want to finish my career in Vegas, close to home.
You can drive to the rink.
He's a Ducks boy, wouldn't he be? I don't know if he was a Ducks fan, but that's probably San Diego. Ducks or Kings?
Kings. No, hard to say.
Yeah.
San Diego's further south, so maybe it is the Kings.
It's pretty far south, yeah.
Bill Peters was allegedly, from what we can tell, not a very good coach. And having a Connor McDavid-led Canada without very good results. So Calgary,
but nobody can win with Connor McDavid.
That's true.
You won't have him dragging him down with the Flames.
Need Matt Hendricks in there, a real veteran leadership presence.
I think he's a UFA this year, so be careful.
Edmonton, he's going back to Edmonton. I bet you any money. That's their one panic move. Leonardo Giannoni, he's a 30-year-old Swiss goalie, and he made 43 of 45 shots against Canada in the semifinal. Okay. He was featured on Coach's Corner, where Don Cherry was saying that, I shed a lot of tears. There was something happening across the pond, and I shed a lot of tears. And you think he's referencing the royal wedding, and it's Canada losing. But he's 30, so I doubt he'll come over here for an AHL contract.
It's been interesting to see some guys with international success in the past get a cup of coffee.
Jeff Glass.
With pro hockey. Jeff Glass, but he is a North American guy. But even trying to think, Fukufuji with the Kings. Like, from nations that you don't expect a lot of NHLers to come out of. Cristobal Huet. Some of those guys sometimes jump over, but yeah, you're right. He's a little bit older than you'd expect for a guy to be brought over at this point in his career.
What Paul's saying is that this Leonardo Giannoni will be a goalie for the Golden Knights next year when they inevitably all get hurt, celebrating their Stanley Cup
Him and
victory.
Ferguson are going to win the cup for them in year 2.
Canada.
Marc-Andre Fleury is a dynasty.
Yes, he is. He's Chris Osgood, but way better. A couple of the notes from there. Patrick Kane was the tournament MVP, and he had 20 points, tying Danny Heatley for the most points at an IIHF tournament in the last 40 years.
Good for him for going.
Yeah. Jonathan Taves wasn't there. But, Patrick, that's pretty impressive.
Patrick Kane is all heart.
Yeah, and as we've barely said anything about the Tampa Bay Lightning playing the Washington Capitals, there's going to be a Game 7, so by the time we record next week, Paul's last podcast, I imagine, before he goes to Winnipeg.
Leaving on June 2nd.
Yeah, so we'll
be phoning it in.
Well, Tampa may be irrelevant by then.
I think so. I think Tampa will win.
You think so?
In a Game 7, the best team always wins a Game 7.
Yeah, I feel that way, but yeah.
With Backstrom hurt, as good as the Caps look tonight,
yeah,
it's hard to make that jump when he is a big part of their secondary offense.
It just smells like Pittsburgh, Ottawa last year when they went to Game 7, and and I think it's Tampa's cup to lose. It's been that way since October, and now it's Vegas's cup to lose. So Tampa will be heartbroken again on the grandest stage of them all.
An interesting factor, have they picked the starting date of the Stanley Cup Final? They usually give them 5 or 6 days.
Well, Game 7 would be played on Wednesday?
Yeah, next Wednesday. This
Wednesday.
So then they would probably play next Wednesday or Thursday.
Oh, they give them a week? They wouldn't start it on a Saturday?
They usually start it just before June. Because they want it to wrap up a week before the NHL awards.
But then that gives them almost a week and a half.
Well, that's what I was going to say. If Vegas, we've been talking about one of the factors, and it's not the only thing. We're not taking away from the performance, folks. Don't at me. But no, if one of
McClellan Paul, it's backwards, folks.
You lose momentum if you do that.
That's true.
they've been doing that though lately because
But if
the
anybody's
NHL is dumb.
if anybody's lost momentum all year in every playoff round, it's the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they've looked just fine.
but they want to if
No, but I'm talking about the NHL in general would lose momentum if you shut down for a week and a half.
I'm sure there's a horse race or something they're worried they're going to lose ratings to, or a big NASCAR event. I mean, but you need to rest these guys. I mean, if both things wrapped up tonight on a Monday,
Yeah.
I suspected they would play Saturday night, game 1.
Yeah.
But it's not going to happen.
And it's a good idea. You want the teams rested and as healthy as you can be at this time of the year. So that's played into it. But yeah, if Vegas loses their advantage, if both teams have a week and change for Vegas, does that impact how, things can work out? You're not going to have as fatigued a Lightning roster as you had in every other series.
I can't see Vegas not being as impressive as always. They give them,
I'm not trying to say Vegas is going to lose because of this factor. I'm just trying to think of.
I'm saying it won't be a factor.
Yeah, especially me picking against Vegas every round of the playoffs so far. I've been looking at it on paper, and these teams, are deeper, should be better. They've been together longer. So now I'm really I'm like, okay, fatigue. How are all these different elements going to come into the Stanley Cup Final if I were to pick a winner? Because it's not going to be easy. They're both going to be amazing teams. We know Vegas is their amazing team. Both the teams left in the East, amazing team.
It's just
little things like that could end up becoming factors.
Yeah, I agree. Here is a very important factor for the Vegas Golden Knights, and that is that a Nevada brothel is offering the Golden Knights a victory celebration if they win.
It.
What are you talking about?
If they win,
I know you guys kept me from reading this.
Sherry's Ranch, which is one of Nevada's most prominent brothels, has offered it as a thank you. It being pronouns, pal. It being their victory celebration as a thank you for increased business they've seen during the playoff run. So a lot of people are going to Vegas. They're renting a convertible. They're going out into the Nevada desert. Paul, yes?
So it's not on the Strip.
No, it's kind of out the ways a bit.
An increase in activity during the playoffs. Is this a potential factor in why these other teams have gone into Vegas and not found success?
See, I'd be all over this King Arthur.
They
Because,
should
the Golden Knights,
They've been offering this service quietly to all the opposition teams all throughout the playoffs.
Hey, Austin Matthews, have we turned you into a man tonight, eh?
Services offered, ultimate GFE,
Girlfriend experience.
sexy secretary scenario,
Mhm.
naughty classroom,
Yep.
lustful locker room.
And this one might not be.
That one's for the Dallas Stars. You got Geisha Girl.
Massage parlor and spa and the tantra chair. Now, I'll have you know, last night when you two were out having lovely scenic drinks in the shadow of Stanley Park, I was at home doing the hard work, the research on Sherry's Ranch on their website.
What was this about hard?
It was hard work. It was rigorous.
I'm sorry.
They offer sex bungalows. They include the following themes: 60s, safari, King Arthur, Roman, and Arabian Nights. And they have specified in the article that the entire sex menu will be made available to any and all players wishing to partake.
I can just see Ryan Reeves walking in there after the Stanley Cup win on his day with the cup, and he just goes up to the desk and says, "Bring me all the bacon and eggs you have."
He's eating it out of the cup.
Well, I just meant I'll take one of everything, please.
Oh, that's way funnier.
I was trying to bring in the Parks and Rec reference and make it a little classy, but that's one of my favorite scenes. Where have you watched? You haven't watched?
No.
Ron, the mustachioed Ron Swanson, goes to a diner and he says, "Bring me all the bacon and eggs you have."
So this is a sex menu, and I reviewed the sex menu too. It's very detailed.
How are the prices?
They are not listed,
Okay.
and they are likely negotiated
They're
between.
free for the nights.
Yeah, the Knights aren't paying shit, and that's good because they're not making money. As you know, this is
Oh my
the
God!
hardest.
With this week and a half break.
They're going to be at Sherry's ranch. They're going to just be exhausted.
Everything is so medieval in Vegas with that knight's name. It's brothels and Opposition teams getting drunk on nights before battles.
I'm going to go with some questions here before we wrap the show.
Okay.
Trevor Connors from Facebook asks, what happens first? The Canucks win a Stanley Cup or Vegas surpasses the Habs for most cups in NHL history?
So that's 25 for the record, folks.
Yeah, but I mean, Geeta, you make a good point. 25, but at the same time, the Canucks winning the Stanley Cup.
In the next 25 years.
So we're still not counting city Stanley Cups. It has to be the Canucks organization.
Yeah,
The Vancouver Canucks, as we know it today.
Well, let's look at it this way. Based on the show, the Golden Knights are favorites to win the Stanley Cup this year. And based on our entire lives of Canuck Heartbreak fans, they'll never win the Stanley Cup.
No, the entire time we've done this podcast, the Canucks haven't even been in the playoffs.
Yes, they have.
When?
They played against Calgary in the first round.
Oh, in the first year?
You must have forgotten that season.
Well,
But there you go. Like, we've been doing this for a very long time.
2013,
Playoffs
we started
are rare
after.
for this team.
Yeah. So we started September of 2013.
We started 13-14, so yeah, that was after those cup runs.
Yeah.
Those playoff appearances.
We've never talked about a good Vancouver Canucks team.
There's a couple of times where we go, hey, the Canucks started the season 2-0 this year. Things are looking good. And Paul goes, you got Michael Granlund producing. Look out.
No, do you remember the start of this year where Dave was like, oh, I think they're going to make the playoffs? And I was the one saying, as much as I like some of these depth guys, let's just give them a second because I don't think this is sustainable the way that they're playing.
Dave was thinking with his heart.
I know. Right. Just like me and the Jets.
Rob Ducksworth on Instagram. He's also a Patreon backer. Do you think the Canucks will go out and try to find a Derek Dorsett replacement via trade or free agency? If so, who would you like to see him join the team? And I'd like to see Mr. Bacon and Egger himself, Ryan Reeves, join the team based on what I've seen from him in the playoffs and in the interviews with Scott Oak.
I was actually looking at Ryan Reeves and wondering, would he go to Winnipeg next year? Because he's a Winnipeg boy.
I'm sorry, is Vegas looking to get rid of him?
I believe he's a UFA at the end of the year.
If you're going to lose a UFA, he's the type of depth guy that I could see, even if he's amazing in the Stanley Cup Finals, get lost in the shuffle and someone could steal him away for an extra couple of bucks. And Winnipeg, several euros.
Oh.
But yeah, he's from Winnipeg. I've loved his interview. Ryan Reeves, to me, has always been sort of this, he's one of the last goons in the league, and I don't know a lot about him. Those interviews are just so charming. He rubbed Scott Oak on the head at the end of the last one.
His hair's all flopping around. And he's getting mad that Scott's son's wearing a Jets jersey. So he sounds like a great guy in the room.
He grew up next door to Scott Oak, I'm
Something
understanding
like that,
now. So he's buddies with Scott Oak's son, I guess.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, go to Winnipeg because, I mean, that team's just going to get better. Like, they're pretty intact next year. Like, they're just going to get better from having this experience and the heartbreak.
Did you see the interview, the second interview you did in the series, the one after the winning goal?
Is that the hot tub one?
No, that was the first one.
Oh,
So there's another one, and one of the questions Scott Oak asked him, and I love this one, was, so how many folks are here in Winnipeg? How many tickets did you have to get? And he goes, I got a few for some folks early on, but they all came to the games wearing Jets jerseys. So it's just my parents, immediate family. And I got to have a conversation with your son, Scott, because I think he works for the Jets. But yeah, there was some sort of insinuation like, I did some stuff for him, and he's still a Jets fan.
Love it. Like, his character is really shining through in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And, like, there aren't a lot of characters in the NHL.
But that's good. And they're winning, and you can do that.
Yeah, and I think he's that positive character in the room like Fleury that's keeping them all loose and positive.
But it would be fun to see him go to Winnipeg.
That's the other thing about Vegas. They've never even faced elimination.
No, they there's a good stat here. I'll read it out loud. I forgot to. The Golden Knights have allowed fewer goals in the 2018 playoffs than both the Maple Leafs and Flyers, and they were both bounced in the first round. I think that's about it.
They should be called the Spartans because they haven't been allowed to experience pain.
Nathan Jakic, I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Are you guys following the Memorial Cup at all?
I didn't get to answer the question.
What was it?
If they were going to bring in Dorsett type of grinder.
Okay, Dorsett with a new robot neck. Is that what you were going to say?
Oh, that would be amazing. I had to think about that for a second, but
if
you could bring Derek Dorsett was just reaching his pinnacle. I thought he was going to be a 50-goal scorer.
He's 60% robot, folks. That is the maximum allowed by the National Hockey League's Players Association.
A few names that jumped out. No, I'm not saying these are who I would sign, but if they were going for that type of presence.
Yeah.
First one I saw, Brad Richardson. Contract is up. Former Canuck.
Again?
Oh, yeah. Whiskey drinker himself.
Whiskey drinker. They need some depth at center.
Oh, God, yeah.
To protect some of these young centers that could play the wing. I'm not such a big fan of taking jobs away from young guys, but Brad Richardson, if you play him in a bottom six role, I'd be okay with that.
Anything to reduce Brandon Sutter's ice time. I'm all for.
Captain?
Captain and assistant captain.
Brad Richardson could be the captain. Yeah, bring him right back. He was a great leader in the room. So again, not saying, but that would be someone they might look at. Antoine Roussel is a UFA.
Oh, God.
If you're looking for someone who could do some damage physically
and mentally,
there's a name I could see the Canucks looking at. They want to bring back their old status as being reasonably hated by fans around the league.
I like him.
Riley Nash is a name I've heard brought up quite a bit. He had an amazing year, though. I think he's going to get overpaid greatly.
Well, they got $14 million in caps.
He got about, 40 points, 41 points.
Rick's son, yeah.
They played on the line together.
Yeah.
This is my son, Riley. He was conceived at the World Juniors.
He's a name that's been brought up. They would have to overpay. Someone's going to overpay for him, I think. Right. Anyway, but the guy in the end who I think is going to replace, where did we start this?
Derek
Dorsett.
Darren Archibald.
It's going to be Darren Archibald.
That's fine with that.
He's going to be given a shot, and he should be given a shot, I think, based on his play. I don't like him if he's in the top 9, but if he's on your fourth line, love the guy.
Yeah.
That's fair.
He'll be able to contribute in parts. He works hard. He hustles. He can kill penalties. Great fourth line player there.
What's the top line looking like this?
Horvat.
Top line's fine. I think it's dropping off after that.
It's a bit of a cliff after that Besser line. Holy shit.
If you can go Besser,
I hardly
Horvat.
remember the names.
Besser, Horvat, and something. We're already the top line last year. You're going to be okay with that. Betsy could come back if he's not hurt this year.
Nathan Yakic asks, are you guys following the Memorial Cup at all? What do you think of it so far? And why is it spelled Titan if it's pronounced Teton?
Because they're French.
Français.
The QMJHL. I watched the Jets, the Pats play last night.
Okay.
They were down 7-3. They made it 7-6.
Yeah, Swift Current was playing Hamilton today.
Yeah, it's not the best. Like it's fun hockey.
It's not the best 4, I feel.
Yeah. Definitely some sloppier hockey, and Regina's the host town, and they were bumped early. And there's a lot of guys, a lot of journeyman dub players that I've recognized over the years. I imagine
this is not a sexy competition this year. It's no London Knights.
No, there are no London Knights, and they're playing in a small Western Hockey League barn with obstructed views. So there's always a guy with a cowboy hat standing up to go take a piss, blocks the camera. But it's still fun hockey, and if there's a few days off, definitely watch them when there's no NHL playing.
All I've heard is Noah Dobson this and Noah Dobson that. I haven't watched any games. But I've been hearing Hayden Fleury's at the games apparently, and has been raving about this Noah Dobson kid that he thinks could be in the league next year
for the Canucks, because
that's a guy that could be available at 7, and it is good to know there's those 4 second-tier defensemen. The Canucks will probably wind up with one of them.
Speaking Canucks, Squampton asks if they should trade high on Nelson this summer, and I say go for it. If Thatcher Demko is going to be here next year,
Paul's doing his PR.
On the same hand, I'm like, what, selling high on Nilsson? Like, I don't think there's a whole market out there. Like, it would be, you have to give him away probably because he's making a decent wage.
You sold him to Sweden
as a backup.
Why can't you sell him to Philadelphia?
Committing him.
You guys got no goalies.
Let me tell you about this guy.
That's true. Maybe the Canucks should hire me because I did not think I was doing a great sell job on Nilsson, and he's starting for Sweden.
It was like you were playing hard to get.
I was selling him as a backup or third stringer.
July 1st, Ron Hextall. The Philadelphia Flyers are proud to sign from the Swiss leagues, Leonardo Giannoni.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a huge market. Side note, Canucks goaltending note, Dick Bachman signed in Sweden today, so he's not back next year.
So it's Demko's.
So there's no fourth string veteran anymore.
Okay.
But yeah, I think they'll keep Demko on them. Honestly, the way things are shaping up, Demko's going to be in the minors. He'll get called up and played at every opportunity possible, and Nilsson will be around for one more year because his contract is probably more than he's worth.
They can just trade Nilsson to Vegas when their goalies get hurt again too. That seems like a reasonable plan.
there you go, and he'll win the Stanley Cup next year.
Probably.
He'll probably set up the winning goal.
Ryan Hank, he's 94. He goes, can you read my iTunes review on the podcast? Which I will. Also, the Vegases may be the best team ever in the NHL. I mean, they turned Lucas Spiza into an icon, or at least for positive reasons.
He was an icon before he got there.
Yeah, but like for negative reasons.
Yeah.
Spiza's an interesting one because the moments I remember from the Winnipeg series of him are he broke a stick at one point when he had an opportunity to fire from the point. He fanned on a shot at one point, gave the puck away. Like the memorables, and I know with defensemen, the memorable things a lot of the time are mistakes, but he hasn't been that great, and the team as a whole has been good. But has it been despite Lucas Spiza's efforts? And
Yes!
I know the winning goal was a deflection from his shot. So
There
you
you
get
go.
some good, you get some bad.
He didn't just become a superstar and an all-star.
He did. He went to Vegas, and then he went to the ranch, and the next thing you know, he came out confident, ready to go.
I like Lucas Spiza. I've said that he was one of my favorite guys to interview after the games, but I don't think he was the reason they won that series.
That's fair. Hank the Tank 10 writes, hockey for this is his Apple Podcast review. And if you write a really good one on our app on our iTunes store, and it's really good through your Apple Podcast app, I'll read it on the air. And that
It's
is
a little dated. It's from February.
that's fine. Most of the what's changed since February? It's not like
We've
Got
only got
better, okay?
hockey for people that can both read and write legibly. That's true. A great podcast. Sir Winston Churchill would have rated this 5 eclipses out of 5. They're entertaining, relevant, and humble. They recognize the Kelowna Rockets as the best team in the Dove, and their use of referee whistles is timely. Boy, this is
that's
dated.
dated.
If John Stamos were to listen to this podcast, he might say, mercy. Never too serious, but also not a bore. Pucks on Net is true to their word and keeps the fancy and fantasy people away. I figured out how to change my iTunes screen name, so I'm not embarrassed to leave a review now. You know, his iTunes screen name before was
No.
Swallowing.
Oh.
That's interesting.
He must have reviewed Sherry's Ranch.
Would Winston
No, he
Churchill
didn't.
have liked our podcast? He was an interesting historical character.
I think
Depending on who you ask, he was either a very horrible or great man.
I think Jesus would have liked our podcast because he rolled with a pretty colorful crew back in his day.
He was very accepting of folks of all backgrounds and
So are we.
practices.
Yeah, so I'm going to wrap up the podcast.
On that note, what did you say? The Pucks on Net is bigger than Jesus?
Damn straight it is. That's a John Lennon quote.
Yeah, if anybody didn't get that reference and is offended and unsubscribing.
Yeah.
It's John Lennon, not Paul.
Yeah.
Not Paul McCartney.
So that'll wrap it up for this week's podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at PucksOnNetCA or PucksOnNetCA. And if you want to pledge a couple of bucks, help with production costs, you can over to patreon.com/PucksOnNet. And in a few moments, we'll do 5 minutes for paying over there. And if you don't want to give us money, that's perfectly fine because that's your hard-earned money. We're not going to tell you what to do with it. You can just go and do what Ryan Hank did and subscribe and rate and review in the Apple Podcast Store. Help defeat the awful Steve Jobs algorithm. And just make sure you like and follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. And make sure you go like our Instagram and Facebook pages, which are updated on the Reg now. And
tweet and tag Pucks on Net. Your favorite PMAC, is it McClellan or McCartney?
that is a good thing.
Let us know.
Can people watch us on Twitch?
They could.
If I got a Twitch?
If they can, I'm slightly frightened
They've been
because we
watching-
didn't set that
Wait,
camera up.
if I set up a Twitch?
If you would have to hold your phone steady for an hour and 17 minutes. I don't think you'd do
I don't
it.
think that's how Twitch works, Ryan. You could, but I don't think that's what people do.
Twitch.com/PucksOnNet where you can pledge a couple
You
of
better
bucks.
reserve that or someone's going to steal it, get all of our hits.
We'll be stuck with Pucks on Net
Probably.
Twitch. Good night.
If I could move, you know, I would try and tell you how it all gone to see. If I could move